Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has renewed threats to seize Gaza territory if Hamas does not release the remaining hostages. He stated that military pressure will intensify, including land seizures and other measures. Let's take a listen to what he said.
אנחנו משנים את פני המזרח התיכון. הלחימה בעזה נמשכת. ככל שהחמאס יתמיד בסרבנותו לשחרר את חטופינו, המכבש שנפעיל יהיה עוצמתי יותר ויותר, ואני אומר לכם, חברי הכנסת, אני אומר את זה גם לחמאס. זה כולל תפיסת שטחים, וזה כולל עוד דברים. אתם ממחזרים את הסיסמאות הלעוסות, המגוחכות, על קץ הדמוקרטיה. ובכן, פעם אחת ולתמיד, לא הדמוקרטיה בסכנה, שלטון הפקידים בסכנה.
While anti-government protests have erupted across Israel, with thousands demonstrating against judicial reforms that critics say threaten democracy. Protesters gathered outside the Knesset and the Prime Minister's residence as lawmakers debated controversial changes to the judiciary. The humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to deteriorate. The UNRWA has warned that bodies remain trapped under rubble and medical facilities are overwhelmed with doctors unable to treat the injured. In the past 24 hours, at least 38 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks. The UN estimates that 142,000 people have been forcibly displaced since Israel resumed its offensive on March the 18th. Meanwhile, many Gazans took out a march in Beit Lahia chanting anti-Hamas slogans. The hostage crisis remains a critical issue, with 59 hostages still in captivity, of whom Israel believes 35 are dead. Joining us to discuss these developments is Professor Rohan Gunaratne, a Middle East affairs expert, who is joining us live from Singapore. Professor Gunaratne, thank you ever so much for being here. We first, of course, need to talk about the comments from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu threatening to take territory in Gaza if the hostages aren't released. On first impact, I want to talk about the civilian impact and what could that have if Israel were to take Gazan territory and Palestinian territory. What would happen to the people?
Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to annex Gaza. His threat is that unless Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other threat groups that participated in the October 7th, 2023 attack, unless they surrender, they disarm, and they release the hostages, he will annex Gaza. This is his main threat, and he is moving in that direction. He is gradually socializing the people. That is what he is going to do. So if one reads through carefully and also examines the messages of the Israeli Minister of Defense and other ministers, the Israeli leadership is moving in that direction.
Yes, Professor Gunaratne, I also want to look at protests that we've seen in Gaza, anti-Hamas protests, calling, of course, for action. Do you think this is a situation that we might see happen more often, given the fact that it seems that these strikes that are killing civilians are, of course, directly correlated to the fact that Hamas aren't releasing these Israeli hostages?
Those protesters are mostly calling for a ceasefire, but some of them are certainly against Hamas because they are tired of Hamas, they are fed up of Hamas. And what is important is that today the world understands this situation and works with Israel and with Palestine to end the war. But I personally believe that Hamas will infiltrate those protests and they will identify those who have called for anti-Hamas agitation. These people will be identified, especially by the Hamas internal security people, and they will capture them and they will torture them. So these protests may not go on for such a long time. But if you examine the sentiments of the Palestinians, they want Hamas to release the hostages because they know that as long as Hamas is keeping Israeli and other foreign hostages, that Israel will continue to fight Hamas.
Yes, and looking at the Israeli action that of course is continuing, we know further deaths reported in the last 24 hours. Could you give us an insight on the conditions that are once again playing out in Gaza for many people that have also been displaced? We know over 140,000 people have been displaced, and of course the humanitarian situation is not a good one in the Gaza Strip. So could you provide some more insight on that for us?
Since Tuesday of last week, IDF started a wave of operations claiming that Hamas has not released the Israeli and other hostages. Anyways, Israel also has the right to conduct operations and to raise hostages. But if one examines, the IDF also resulted in very Palestinian deaths. It has killed primarily, the primary focus has been to attack and decimate the Hamas rank and file. Hamas Majlis Shura, or what you call the consultative committee or the Politburo, of the 22 members, more than half has been killed by in Israeli operations. But as you have rightly said, very significant civilians death toll and also civilian injured in this war. So it's a very tragic war. But again, the world must understand what is happening, and they must put maximum pressure on Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and those countries that are supporting these groups, that they must release the hostages.
Yes, Professor Gunaratne, as we bring a close to this discussion, we know Benjamin Netanyahu is facing pressure, not just geopolitically in terms of the resumption of fighting and action within Gaza, but also in Israel itself. More anti-government protests taking place. He's calling out to the opposition and slamming them for their potential role in these demonstrations. How do you think that could impact the current war that we're seeing in Gaza? With further pressure on Netanyahu, how will he react, and how will his military react with that extra pressure?
Prime Minister Netanyahu is fighting two wars. One is against the 7 fronts. Primarily, of course, the fight in Gaza. But he is also fighting a very serious fight at home. That is after he dismissed the Israeli internal intelligence chief and the judiciary, the attorney general. So we have seen that he's under a lot of pressure, especially from the Israeli people, because they don't want that to happen. They are all supporting the IDF operations, the Israelis, but they don't want Netanyahu to do this because they respect the ISA chief, the internal security chief, and the attorney general. So Netanyahu will face huge issues in the coming days and coming weeks and coming months if he does not reflect deeply of his actions, because no one wants intelligence chief to be dismissed during this time of war. No one wants the attorney general to be dismissed during a major war.
Professor Rohan Gunaratne, thank you as always for joining us. Tensions continue to flare in the Middle East, in Israel and Gaza, and we, of course, will be across that. But we now move on.